Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the State of Thai Politics in the Aftermath of the Elections. This is this year's first public event on Thailand. I would first like to thank and to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and future. This event is being hosted by the Sydney Southeast Asia Center, which is the world's premier research center for Southeast Asia, and it boasts nearly 500 researchers working on different area issues across the faculties and disciplines in all the Southeast Asian countries, including a number of researchers actively working on Thailand. Just to give you a glimpse of what might be coming up this year, there would be another public event likely in September, which will feature Pawin Chachawan Phongpan, who will be coming here for about 1 month in residence, working on Thai politics as well. So if you're interested in finding out more about events on Thailand and other countries in Southeast Asia, I encourage you to sign up to be a member or check our websites or maybe grab pamphlets, which are located here on your way out, so that you can keep up to date with our next events. So we have a really interesting and to be honest, I'm quite flattered to have the most esteemed researchers on Thailand at our panel today. And we have first Dr. Chris Baker, who received his PhD from Cambridge University and has taught many years in Asian histories and politics in Cambridge. In 1979, he moved to Thailand and worked in business and taught several universities. He now works independently as a writer, editor, and translator. We also have Dr. Pasupong Paijit, who's a professor of political economy at Chulalongkorn University. She has a PhD from Cambridge University as well and has worked as an expert with the International Labour Office and been a visiting professor in world-renowned universities in the United States. Together, they have published a number of critical books on Thailand, Thai history, literature on Thailand, and Thai political economy. Next, we have Sunai Pasuk, who's a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. He has specialized experts in political, security, and foreign policy of Thailand, and has also actively worked on Myanmar. And to moderate the panel today, we have Dr. Roger Lee Huang, who is a lecturer in international relations and security studies in the Department of Security Studies at Macquarie University, and has previously worked and lived in Thailand and specialized in the politics of Myanmar and Taiwan. So the format today, each of the speakers will present 10 to up to 15 minutes of their thoughts on the election and some of their maybe data and research they have gathered. And then we will be following up by a Q&A moderated by Roger. We will allow Thai language questions in the Q&A, and I would like to translate the questions. So if you want to ask questions in Thai, please just raise your hand normally and say, I want to ask in Thai, and I will be up here live translating. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that kind introductions. I won't waste too much time, so we'll have Dr. Chris Baker give about a 15-minute presentation on the basic facts of the election, and then we'll continue with the other panelists.
How do I get it up?
Just go to the next slide.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much to Amy and to Roger. It is marvelous to see so many people here tonight. Sorry. Okay, I think these two pictures sort of sum up this election context very nicely. You have the paunch against the selfie. I've been asked to give some basic data on the election, which I most of us know, but I'll skip through it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the future forward. I'm going to talk here about this guys. Okay? So the big question is, of course, who won? The first thing to say is that any results we've got at the moment are only preliminary, because they're not going to announce the final results until the 9th of May. There's a handful of constituencies that are already doing recounts, and there's something like 60 seats where there has been accusations of some misconduct, which could lead to a rerun or whatever. And then, of course, they're still trying to work out how to compute the party list. So the figures here, you have to accept that they're subject to those conditions. I think we also have to say that there may not be an exact connection between these figures and what actually happened at the polling booths on 24th of March. It is quite possible that this is the filthiest election we've ever seen, but we don't know, and we probably never will. We just have to, keep a degree of that. Okay, so this was off the Election Commission of Thailand's site a couple of days ago. This uses the supposed 100% count from the 28th and the second computation of the party list. And this shows Thai coming out totally with 137, followed by Pacharat, and followed enormously, surprised by Future Forward with 80. What it also shows, if you show the whole chart, is that there could be 27 different parties in the parliament as a result of the recalculation of the party list, with many of them down here with names you've never heard of, the Thai Citizens Power Party and the Thai Teachers for People Party, with one seat each. As of today, they're recalculating this again, and it may be only 26 or 25. Very interesting is the quick issue of whatever happens in the seats, where is the legitimacy? What is the result? What is the effect of this on political legitimacy of the different contestants? Because, of course, we've seen that Thai have come out very quickly to try and say, we could form a government, we could form a coalition. But on the other side, the Palang Pracharat Party have come out and said, well, we got more votes than anybody else. So they're claiming legitimacy on that basis. So it depends how you look what was happening in this election. If you consider that it was a kind of referendum on the military junta as measured by the vote for their party, Palang Pracharat, they clearly didn't do very well because they only got 24% of the total. If you were to consider that the kind of anti-junta parties, we should look at their vote to consider who has got the legitimacy. Well, between them, Thai and Future Forward have got 40. So again, they're really not up to it. And what this shows you here, with the other here holding in some ways the balance, and these are all little parties, that the result is absolutely, as it were, a draw. It's a hung election, a hung vote, and it's going to be very difficult from here on. If we look at it regionally, compared to the last election in 2011, we can see that the red, which represents the Thaksinite party's Thai, it's sort of shrunk back a bit. And most obviously, this bit in the middle here is the Palang Pracharat has taken over somewhat here. This is a little bit misleading because this map shows by constituency. This only shows by province. So in fact, this is actually much more choppy than it looks in this map, because they're individual constituencies within a province that sometimes differ from the total vote. But clearly, you can see that it is just as much regionally divided as we have seen in the past, with the Democrats now gone back to being a southern party, as they have been quite often in the past. I think most interestingly, and this shows the five top parties here, that vote by region. And I'm mostly looking here at the orange bit, which is the vote on Future Forward. And you can see that in Greater Bangkok, that's Bangkok plus the 4 provinces around it, it narrowly got more votes than anybody else. Think about it. This is a party formed for the first time about a year ago. that really didn't start to come into public consciousness until November, when there was a sort of little release on political campaigning, and which at the start of the election campaign, polls and everyone else were saying they would win 0 seats. And that even in 2 weeks before, there was a poll which said they may win just 5 seats and a couple on the party list. So they came right at the end. They came and they did enormously well. So here they're doing the top. They did pretty well in the centre. They did well in the north, not so well in the northeast because of the continued domination of Pertai, or in the south because of the continued domination of the Democrats. So, as I said, this is a remarkable event, that this party has come up on basically a mixture of a youth platform and a quite radical political program, and has finished up having this most extraordinary result. So I'm going to talk a couple of things about this party. And I'm going to start off by, I hope, if it still works this time, wait a second, by showing you an ad. Now, if you were in Bangkok before the election, early in the year, you would probably have seen one of these ads that was running at this time. And the idea is we see a conversation between an older person and a younger person. But it's confusing, because the older person in the minute is backing the ideas of liberty, self-expression, change, enthusiasm, and so on. Whereas the younger person is in favor of discipline, authority, tradition, and the order of things. Okay? And so here is the younger person, and this is, the mother is like a child, and she's saying, oh, I've got to dress nicely, and the younger guy is saying, no, you should be a little bit more self-expressive in the way that you do things. And then when you get to the end, she even goes and musses her hair, so she looks a bit sexier for the kids and the idea, as you see at the end, is that the heads have been swapped, right? So the message, it's selling a banking app, okay? It's selling a banking app, and the idea is just simply that, there is a big difference. It's building off a big difference between the generations. And this is something that, and actually I've been doing a presentation on this for 5 years, because you could see this kind of generation change coming over the last few years. And it's not just young against old, security against change and the usual stuff in that way. What has changed is much bigger than that. The people who now run everything in Thailand, the people who are in their 50s or their 60s, they grew up in the Cold War. Right? They grew up when they were being taught to hate communists and distrust the mass of the people because they were very dangerous. They lived in Thailand, that was a part of the third world, or the developing world, which meant you were backward and a bit poor and very far from the centres of things. And then things changed, so quickly and incredibly quickly. They changed because foreign investment came pouring in. The economy started to lift off. So everybody now is 3 times better off than their parents were, the over one generation. Then the horizons opened up, because first you've got satellite television coming in, then you've got internet, and you get thousands and millions of tourists coming in, more people going out, not just the middle class going out for travel, but more of the common people also going out as labour migration. So between the 2 generations, you go from this to Bangkok that looks like this, and in Thailand that looks very different. So if you think that the sort of critical time when you start to form your ideas about yourself and the world is around the time you are 18. If you came of age 18 in 1990, which is in the middle of this change, today you're going to be 47 years old. So it's people from sort of there downwards, I think, grew up in this very different world. And they're just below this point when they move into the top of their careers and they're 50 and they run everything. But they're really not quite there yet. And what is different is the conception of who you are, where you are in the world, and what you deserve. So this, to me, has been, this is very much a part of what's behind this coming of this Future Forward Party. But there's a fear that something that booms up like this, and booms up very much on the basis of a lot of social media involved in this, promotion. That it will be like the Arab Spring. It will go up and then it will get bought off or dissipated, or in some way it will turn out to be a big disappointment. And I think there's a couple of reasons to be more hopeful than that. And the first is from this. On the day that campaigning started in Bangkok in February, I walked out onto our street and I saw this poster. And it blew me away. Because what it said is, this is their first poster, it said, cut the arms budget, reduce the number of generals, stop conscription. And then, this is a direct attack on the military at a time when the military is more powerful than it's been for the last 20 years. This shows, enormous guts, and it has made this issue very big for this whole election and afterwards. What happens? Within a couple of days, the army chief comes out and threatens them with violence directly, by basically saying, you go on like this and we'll have another massacre of you guys, the same as in 1976. And what happens there? The poster disappears overnight. That's the same spot. A couple of days later, it's gone. It's been spirited away in the middle of the night. So they have set a very different and new kind of agenda in this election. And of course, they're paying for that at this moment. Because while they are now, both the leader, Thanakorn, and number two, Pia are both being attacked in the courts right now. And of course, they are being accused of being bad to the monarchy. But of course, what is really an issue is that they've challenged the military. And that, of course, makes their life likely to be very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you for Dr. Chris Baker's excellent presentation to give you some of the basic facts. But I just remind all the audience, please turn your phone off or it sounds low. I've heard a lot of disruptions there, and that's not very fair to the rest of the audience and the panelists. So what's going to happen now is I'm just going to let all the panelists up there the presentation first, and then after that, as per argument for the chair, I'll ask a few questions and then open the questions to the rest of the audience. So, just like to do some presentation first. Yes.
Is it lighter over there?
Yeah, it is. She can't read her notes.
Well, I. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for the organization to invite me to speak here. My first time in Australia was here, and I'm also a product of Australian education, and it's always like coming home every time I come back here. Of course, Australia has changed a lot, but still, the ideology of liberalism and rights of people is still here. Okay, I've been asked to talk about three things with you today. One, whether the election will make any difference to the economy. Second one is about inequality situation, and the third one is the prospect of Thailand in the future. Okay. First, whether election result make any difference to the economy. As it seems likely that the military and Pracharat government will continue to be likely to be the next government, the likelihood of change in economic policy will be slight. And the policy will continue to be in favor of large, near monopolistic companies with a piecemeal social handouts along the line of charitable and shallow populist kind of policies. There will be an attempt to try to move the East Economic Corridor project forward, but so far the movement on this side has been very sluggish. Now, that's what I think about the economy. The inequality question recently, you may have heard that in the Credit Suisse latest global wealth report have got quite a bit on Thailand. And what's being reported in this report has been interpreted that Thailand is the number one unequal in terms of wealth in the world. Now, this got the people in Thailand very excited. We are number one at last. But of course, the government felt, many quarters in the government felt this is very damaging. So the NESDB, as you know, the National Economic Social Development Board, had to come out and deny it and said the Global Wealth Report is using outdated data. And although Thailand may be unequal in the past, but we have improved enormously. And citing the World Bank figure showing that the Gini coefficient shown in the World Bank has improved in recent times. Little did he know that Credit Suisse was talking about wealth inequality, and they were using different kind of data. And the Gini coefficient that they use is not about Gini coefficient of income, but Gini coefficient of wealth Gini. Anyway, this has come about, this idea that Thailand is number one had come about because this guy in the financial, a big guy in a financial company sort of got excited about this number one idea too and posted it his personal Facebook saying that, oh, Thailand is number one now in terms of inequality. And he was making headlines in the newspaper. Now, when you look closely, actually, Credit Suisse report never said Thailand is number one in the world. But it shows data that indicate that Thailand are among the top countries out of 40 countries that they covered. Thailand is one of the top 4 countries that have the highest wealth Gini. Not the highest, it's second wealth Gini, but the highest share of top 1% in terms of wealth. Okay, you can go and look at this. And what do we think? What do I think about this? My team of researchers at Chulalongkorn University and Thammasat University have just done a research on this, and we brought out a book called Unequal Thailand. And in that book, we have shown we have used a lot of original primary data to show that actually Thailand is very highly unequal in terms of wealth. I'll just give you some example. Okay, first, for the first time, we have access to the distribution of title deed land in the whole of Thailand, covering 95 million rights and covering for about 15.9 million families. And we calculated the Gini of the land concentration, and we found the land Gini on title deed is 0.89, is near 1. And when Gini is near 1, it means it's highly unequal. And next, we found that about 50,000 wealthy individuals own about 50% of all saving deposits in Thailand commercial bank system. And third, we found that assets of 50 richest business family reported in the Forbes top 50 family own altogether assets value equivalent to 1/3 of Thailand GDP in 2018. And the last thing I want to say is that we also found that half of the unearned income in the form of rent, interest income, and dividends accrue to top 1% of the country richest. So if with this information, I would say that Credit Suisse is not far wrong to show that Thailand is one among the top country in the world, which is highly equal. But of course, Credit Suisse didn't say we are the top in the world, and it would be very difficult to prove that Thailand is the number one in the world. Okay, because the information about wealth of the richest people are very difficult to come by properly, and they, even though you try, even I think in developed country will be better because you can have tax data. In developing country, any data about income inequality and wealth inequality is always underestimated, and the figure I show you is also show underestimation. So, what are the reasons for this high inequality in Thailand? One of the most important factors is the fact that so many businesses in Thailand are monopolistic or near monopolies. And most government economic policy would favor this kind of big business, with the belief that big business is the mover engine of economic growth. And we also found that the recent land, building, and inheritance tax, which were passed by this junta, have been so watered down that it would not make much difference to the wealth inequality in Thailand for some time unless these taxes are reformed very quickly, because it's so watered down and the ceiling for people to have to pay tax is very high. So everybody can get exempted. And however, it does have some impact in the sense that people with large amount of land holdings will pay slightly higher tax rates, and they are very worried, even though the tax rate is very low. And one of my colleagues just resigned from her job in order to spend time to look after the family property, how to get away from this tax. But anyway, it will make some difference in the future. Now, the third thing I would like to talk about is the future prospect. In the short term, despite uncertainties, a lot of uncertainties which would make everybody feel very uncertain and agitated, new government will not be able to use Section 44 that have been used in the last 5 years. Okay, and whichever party formed the government must respect and follow the rules and regulations of the parliament. And this parliament would be so different from the previous parliament that Thailand have had, because we could have so many different types of MPs, which we have never seen or encountered before, including young male and female MPs, not only in the Future Forward Party, but in other parties like the Democrat, Phumchai Thai, and Pheu Thai as well. And we will have quite a few LGBTQ activists on environment, human rights activists, and those interested in women's rights, modern welfare system, other than the kind of thing I'm talking about, like charitable handouts and shallow populist policies. And his election will increase Thai voters' hope for many changes to come in Thailand and make Thailand become one of the important Asian economy and country and an important country in the world. And don't forget, we also have emerging party, FFP, which not only just emerged, but offer many new and innovative policies that mean that if the parliamentary system in Thailand continue consistently with no break due to coup and violent disruption, we may be able to move forward as a country that can manage the military as professional army and not as interrupter of our democracy. And I hope I'm not a dreamer alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn, also for keeping up very well in time. And we have our last presenter, Mr. Sinai. And after his presentation, I'll ask a few rounds of questions and then we'll be through for this.
I have a photo that I want to express. Good evening, and thanks to AIM for put me on this panel. Always a pleasure to be with Ajahn Chris and Ajahn Pasuk, and always good to be in this setting that is very relevant to those who are interested in Thailand. I will pick up from what Ajahn Pasuk ended her remarks with hope. This election, in fact, it gave perspective of hope, looking at the performance of future forward, and maybe I turn this one off and immediately. Sorry. Okay, that's better. That one's too booming. I was saying that that the election that just happened had potential to bring about changes. It represented hopes, but now we are facing tremendous challenges. Whether these hopes will be shut down, whether the changes and the expectation for changes would be denied. This is a challenge. Thai people went to vote in an environment that is so difficult. We don't have to discuss anymore whether the election was free and fair or not. It was not free, it was not fair. It happened in a repressive environment that denied fundamental rights that are essential for democracy to prosper. There was no space for free speech. Media remained censored until the election day and now through the election day. Freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association were denied. Those are basic conditions for the conduct of free and fair elections. And what else? In any election, everyone, every party ought to start on even footing. But in this election, General Prayut, the junta leader, let's not forget, he's not just a prime minister of Thailand. He is the leader of a coup group that staged a coup in May 2014 overthrowing an elected government, and since then established repressive authoritarian rule using Article 44 of the Constitution that rule with total impunity, and he cannot be held accountable for anything that he has done, including serious human rights violation. This is the one that was nominated by political party to be the PM candidate. You can imagine what kind of political party would nominate an abusive, repressive coup leader as their candidate for prime minister. What else? I said everyone ought to start on equal footing. Prayut didn't play fairly. He started with already 250 senators in his pocket, and these senators are to be handpicked by him. This shouldn't be Thailand, you know. What came to your mind when you heard of a special slot being reserved for handpicked appointed senator? Myanmar. Thailand is that once used to be beacon barrier for democratic standards in Southeast Asia, is now on par with military regime in Myanmar. There's no equal footing. It's been unfair from the beginning. And then what else, you know, then Chris talked about the flip-flopping of election commission about calculation formula for seat allocation. This is also absurd. You don't see anywhere in the world that election commission cannot explain what formula is going to be used to allocate seats in the parliament. It is as if, you know, when the first, we have to say, because there's so many versions of temporary results. When the first set of temporary results came out, it showed that, you know, the scale was tipping in favor of the anti-junta side, with Pheu Thai and with Future Forward and their allies. And then somehow there was, let's use the other formula that would take away votes from the anti-junta side, gave away to small party that Chris presented very clearly. They ended up have 1 or 2 seats, regardless of the actual votes that they received. And this is very controversial, but it is happening. So it is rigged to the core, I would say. You know, this election is rigged to the core, rigged into the structure of the Constitution. But again, referring to Chris' presentation with all those charts, we see that the country is divided. One half voted for the junta, the party that clearly supported the junta. The other half, roughly, voted for something else. This is something that we need to discuss. What represents this something else? Is it kind of broadly described as pro-democracy? Is it fair to say that, or it is a combination of pro-democracy, people who want to see changes, people who have enough with old politics, or they have one thing common. They don't want Thailand to continue to be under military rule. This is something that we need to go into detail, and I hope we have a chance to do that during the Q&A. But for now, you know, yes, the election is rigged. There's a lot of vote buying, but I, at the same time, think it's going to be unfair to blame it all on manipulation of electoral system, blame it on all vote buying. It reflects the fact that Thailand is deeply divided, and this division is getting wider and deeper as a result of this election. Often, in a divided society, conventional wisdom think that an election will bring about reconciliation and stability. In Thailand, this time period, it is going in an opposite direction. Why so? Because the military has made it clear from the beginning, and then Chris talked about, you know, what the army chief said. I would go further into details of that. It is clear that the army will not tolerate any attempt to disrupt status quo, including proposal for military reform, proposal for ending of forced conscription, proposal for greater transparency of military budget allocation or to cut that down. The army chief even referred to a notorious song that reflects hate speech, "Nak Pan Din" in Thai, "Scum of the world." He used that song to imply to proposal by the opposition parties, Pheu Thai and Future Forward, who proposed reform of the military and budget cut. Those songs were used. I belong to the generation of 1992, that the uprising that time. The song was played before the soldiers started shooting at us on the street. And beyond that, further back, 1976, before the massacre of students at Thammasat University. This is a notorious song. In my view, I happen to live next to military barrack in Bangkok. They play this song every day. This is the indoctrination of how Thai soldiers now see anyone who try to propose disruption to status quo in the hand of the military. They're already prepared for it. What more? Often people refer to the coup in Thailand in 2014 as a bloodless coup, but they forget that the killing started already in 2010. And all the generals and the rest of the troops who are now controlling Thailand have blood on their hands. They haven't been held accountable for the atrocity they committed in broad daylight in front of the camera where the world witnessed. This is the same group of military that control Thailand right now. This is the same group of military that threaten the opposition, threaten activists, threaten the media. And now they are threatening diplomats who express concern about repression in Thailand, about the arbitrary use of the law against opposition leader. What happened to Thanathorn just then? He's now being charged with sedition, totally groundless. Why do you use sedition charges against Thanathorn? So that they can bring him to military tribunal that doesn't meet international standard of fair trial. And the use of military tribunal against civilians put Thailand on a hotspot at the UN Human Rights Council screening again and again. Now they are going to use that against Thanathorn. And what else if he is convicted on this bogus charges? 7 years in jail. And on top of that, he will not be able to contest in election ever again in his lifetime. Piyabut, his Secretary General, Future Forward, is also in trouble for being accused using misinformation and nowadays the Thai has capacity to mobilize social media in their favor. So they have mobilized misinformation and fake news campaigns against Secretary General Future Forward Party, accusing him of conspiring to overthrow the monarchy. In Thailand, that is almost equal to a death sentence. I am deeply worried for the safety of the two leaders of Future Forward. The military see Future Forward as kind of a rising star without solid party structure yet. So they think that if they can decapitate the party going after the two leaders, they can put an end to Future Forward. This is different from the perception of the army toward Thaksin-like political parties. Those have structures, those have mass-based support. So they go after this solution. So the response to threats from the military, from the status quo elements in the society seem to be different, in my opinion. With Future Forward, it is against individuals, but with very serious charges. With more structure, Thaksin-like party, they go after party dissolution. But the result of this is that expectation of Thai voters who want to see change are going to be shut down. Their hopes are going to be denied. So that's why I chose this photo to be a gimmick for a prop for my presentation. This finger salute is considered to be illegal in Thailand by the military junta. If you do this publicly, you can go to jail. You can be taken to military camps for attitude adjustment. And the term attitude adjustment Where do you hear this term, North Korea? Thailand has sunk that deeply in terms of being an authoritarian society that cannot tolerate differences in opinion, to the point that people with different opinions, people with dissenting opinion, have to be adjusted. Think of a scene in Orwellian books. This is something that Thailand has become. So this is what I'm going to use to reflect my thoughts about the situation in Thailand. We are at the point of potentially new political confrontations. And the military is ready to use violence again. And they know that if they resort to violence again, they can't walk away with the crimes that they commit, with blood on their hands again. So we need the world to pay more attention to Thailand. Australia is one of those countries that immediately after the coup downgrade relationship with Thailand and demanded that for resumption of diplomatic relationship with Thailand, political economic relationship with Thailand, Thailand needs to hold a free and fair election and need to have a genuine return to civilian democratic rule, which now the Thai junta failed on both counts. So what the Australian government will do? This is my question. Thank you.
Thank you for this nice, passionate discussion on human rights conditions in Thailand. So I'd like to just start with kind of a general question for all three panelists, I think, which will give us a better idea of why is there even an election. And in fact, that's my question. Is that given that this is perhaps the most authoritarian junta in Thai history since probably the 1970s, right? Why is it that there was an election at all, right? I mean, okay. So what do you think is the purpose of the 2019 elections? And linking this perhaps to the coup of 2014, why was there a coup in 2014? What were they hoping to achieve? And why was there this election? What was the purpose of this election?
Maybe I can go first with why they wanted to hold an election at all. Election was set as precondition for Thailand to be recognized by the rest of the world. It became a rogue state immediately when the general staged a coup. Everyone dropped their relationship with Thailand. And if you notice that Prayut spent less time promising an election with Thai people than promising it with world leaders. He went to Japan, promised it with Abe, went to the US, promised it with Trump, and then with the rest of European leaders. It is for consumption of international community. That's why I asked international community to see through the lies and deception of the junta that this election is bogus and it shouldn't be recognized. And for their attempt to crack down on the opposition and pro-democracy factions, they need help, they need support. And then I will go to President Pasuk for the second part of your question.
You know, the coup in 2014 was somewhat like the coup you had in, say, in 1932 or in 1976. In that it's just not one of those coups where there's a gang of generals who'd like to run the country and loot it for a little bit of time and then go back home. Which we've had several of those too. This is an ideological coup. Right? It is, in a sense, they had started off maybe back in the early 2000s thinking this man, Thaksin, is terribly dangerous and we want to get rid of him. And they try and get rid of him with a coup and court cases and exile. But he doesn't go away. He continues, he becomes like a spirit living in a cave on the top of a mountain somewhere, which still has effect on the whole country, even though he's not there. And I think they come to the conclusion that they literally, the problem is not Thaksin. The problem is elected democracy, is letting people vote and determine who becomes the government. So the coup in 2014, although I think a lot of us woke up to this rather slowly, was designed to give them the space to install a completely different way of running the country, which you can call a controlled democracy, a limited democracy, or whatever you like. And this took them a bit of time because they had to write a new constitution. And they got it wrong the first time, so they had to go back and try again. They want to put in place what they call a 20-year strategic plan with a law that says governments in the future must follow this plan, and if they don't, they will be liable to prosecution by the Counter-Corruption Commission, which is still a very strange idea. But basically, they're saying that what these governments do in the future has to be controlled. Also, they have had an assembly, a legislative assembly in place for this time, which has been passing law after law, which fundamentally re-empowers the bureaucrats. What had happened between the early 1980s, the early 1990s, and particularly with the 1997 Constitution, decentralization to local government, was a transfer of power away from the bureaucracy to various kinds of elected bodies, not just to the parliament, but a whole, elected local councils, municipalities, elective village officers, and so on and so forth. They basically scrapped that system and put the power back to the bureaucrats all through. And they've also, the fourth thing they've done is pass a large number of repressive laws they can use to enforce this. Now, this took them some time. It took them some time because the Constitution, but also these kind of bureaucrats work slowly, right? So they don't do anything very quickly indeed. But I guess the reason, apart from what Sunai says, which is absolutely right, they need the international credibility. The other reason to have it now is they thought it was ready. They thought the model was ready, they could launch it out. And they thought they could control the election, which launches it out, that they would definitely be in control at the end of this election. And that was a bit of a miscalculation.
Well, I do not disagree with Kun Sunai, and I think we're not going to have a rosy road. It's going to be a very rough road for everyone. But why so much effort and attempts to roll back? And it took them 5 years to write this constitution, to plan, to seize the power. Why? Because the challenges were too great. The challenges and the change which have taken place in the last generation in Thailand has been so enormous. And if we did not have this election, we would not have realized the diversities of view of people, right? That are represented by the different shapes and spectrum of these, how many parties?
27. Oh, the number contesting 80.
80. Yeah.
And we will never really know about what this young generation of about 7 million people, which have been denied election for the last 7 years, think, because we have been repressed. The freedom of speech and expression have been repressed for the last 5 years. And so, with this in mind, I have taken an optimistic view of what's going on in Thailand. I think we have to think of the challenges, and I don't think that the military and group will succeed in the end. And however, how long is it going to go on? Well, someone said to me, a lawyer said, it should be about 100 years after 1932. Mm-hmm. And we've gone 80, right? So maybe another 20 years. But still, it's not so long, 20 years in terms of our lifetime and the history. But we have to be patient because Thailand is so different from many Southeast Asian countries because the continuity of history and the continuity of the power of the traditional elites have been intact. And 1932 did not have a scratch on that, really, looking back. And because of those has been no break in the past. And and yet, the challenges are so very powerful. I'll just tell you a few challenges. First, the traditional peasantry, which was the basis of the elite power, is disappearing. They have changed completely, and this elite group have not accepted that. They know that they have changed, but they have not accepted it, and their view is still old. Secondly, the implantation of the modern economy has been also quite pervasive. And we cannot say that Thailand is completely transformed as industrial society like, say, Korea, but it is a newly industrializing country. And in this process, peasants have been converted to workers. And even the poor in the urban areas, they also become workers and professional, a lot more professional people. And with the young generation of at least 7 billion who have a completely new experience in their life, their view, and their exposure to all the new technology. Then we have the mobility of labor and peasantry. And third thing, the communication revolution, which allowed the younger generation learning to escape the control of the older generation and the old elites. Now, how are these military juntas going to manage this kind of change? Okay, so I would say that while illiberal, the authoritarian forces have been very strong and fought back, and we're not going to have a kind of leading movement of Thailand. We're going to go, back to what happened to France after 1789. It went back to the imperial, and it took many more years. Hopefully, we will not take that long. So, and this looking into history like this, it gives me some hope. I have to tell myself that because I have to tolerate. I have to make myself tolerate the political situation, which are not going to be nice in the next 10 to 15 years. Too long.
Yes, well,
Hopefully, maybe 5 years.
yeah, thank you for that detailed response. I think I have a lot of questions, but I'm sure everyone else does as well, so I won't have the time, and I'll open the questions to the floor now. So if you just raise your hand and keep your questions very short, we don't want any commentaries. And if you do represent any media or diplomatic service, please make that known so we're aware. And I'll start with Michelle, given that she is the director of the center.
And I have a microphone. Constitution final questions there. I mean, on Tuesday night we were talking about the Indonesian elections, and in Indonesia, both in 2014 and in this year, the Labour movement played a substantial, small but important role in electoral politics. I mean, I know the Thai Labour movement is weaker, but do you think there's any opportunity for social movements to actually do more than just get 1 or 2 people in Parliament?
Well, we have, at least for Future Forward, that had Labour activists on their top party list candidate, And she got in, of course, with this high the party is sold for arbitrary charges. So that is one, and then there are other parties, particularly the other one called the Commoner. They did not get enough vote to have seating in the parliament, but their ideas have spread that it's possible now because back then in Thailand that for activists to be part of formal electoral contest, they need to have institutional backing. But now we have rather organic representation, someone from grassroots level. This is new. And we hope that, if there is now Future Forward managed to stay alive through this harassment, it can serve as a middle point, taking candidates and members of parties that don't get seating this time to be that parliamentary assist staffer and other. So that will be an entry point for them.
I think whether or not Future Forward manages to continue, I think what they have done already is sort of breaking the wall. Because up until now, in the last 20 years, the people who have occupied the parliament in Thailand come from a very narrow demographic, and they are almost all male. 7% is the highest women. Almost all male, sort of middle-aged, small business, either small or large. And that's it, so it's a very, very narrow. And what we're now going to see is a rainbow going in there. And that is just an example. It says something else is possible. When you have this very narrow thing, people get used to thinking this is normal, right? It's not normal. This will show.
I think that international community also have a part to play in the future of Southeast Asia and Thailand as well. In terms of course, civil society, NGOs, and social movements need support from outside the country, and there are lots of active funding agencies and whatnot, and intellectual interest in all this. We have to try to think of a way to change the issue focus civil society and NGOs into a much more activist social movement base, and I think the international community has a part to play in this. And we have not paid enough attention to the women's movement. The women are half the country or more than half the country, and there are various spots of groupings and feminists and women's movement, but they tend to be so much issue based, and I think that that is another area where we should pay attention to. And with if you have the parliamentary system going long enough, someone said courage can spread and imitate it far and wide, and we just need a little bit of push.
Swadika. My name is Pathavan Sawanagud as independent. My question is for Kunsunai Pasu. Just 1 week before the election date, Kun Thanathorn Jingruengkit was asked in a program whether which one he preferred, imprisonment or exile. And one day in a debate, one day before the election date, I remember one today, at Thammasat University, he pledged for the politicians to stay in the parliament to receive the bullet. That's enough for commoners, for civilians to be, to take the bullets. This is the question that I had to ask. Will that be another bloodshed? Thank you.
Well, in fact, what I would say is that we have to prevent bloodshed from happening again. And that's why we need to make sure that the military will go back to the barrack and they are prosecuted for the crimes and bloodshed that they committed in the past. We need to set a standard that no one, no matter who you are, no matter how powerful you are, you will be punished for the crimes that you commit. This is the message that the military need to learn. We really need to break the cycle, the vicious cycle of impunity. I am deeply concerned that the threat, which was not at all veiled when the army chief gave out about the song Akandin, that was not a veiled head for Thai people. We were fully aware of the meaning of this song. It is a license to kill. And Thanathorn bravely, as Adantasuk said, courage is important and courage is infectious. So when Thanathorn showed his courage, urging other candidates from other parties to hold hands and fight off next coup attempt, including by taking bullets. It gave courage to his supporters. It gave courage to supporters of other parties who oppose military rule. The reason why I chose the photo just then about the three-finger salute, because in Thailand that was a symbol of defiance. It was a symbol of unyielding attitude toward no matter what threats they are throwing at you. And it is now spreading again. This salute came, of course, it's the Hunger Games. And Thai people picked this salute, calling it, well, in Hunger Games, it is divided by district. And Thai people call that country District Thailand. They are fighting against repressive military junta at the center. And in this center, the center is not just the capital, it's not Bangkok, but it's the center of power that we all talk about. Power in political terms, economic terms, social-cultural terms. They are fighting back at that. And after the junta launched crackdown for anyone who dares showing the salute, people were afraid. But now the salutes are coming back. You see almost everywhere I went to political rally after election, the salute is coming back. People are not afraid anymore. So it is important to have someone who shows courage and keep showing the courage to inspire the rest in the society. That is perhaps the way to prevent the next bloodshed, showing to the military that there will be a very high price for them to pay next time.
The reality is that the current situation is very, very dangerous indeed. Because what happened, everything bottled up for 5 years. And then when you announced the election and they had to lift the boot off the ground, all kinds of things suddenly came out, as he said, like this. That's one side. The other side, this army chief has shown us and said time after again, he is prepared to be violent. So that's very dangerous indeed. Apart from what Kun Sunai says, I think the most important people to call on right now is the Thai business community. Because the people who really fear the disruption and violence happening again is the business community. Both the local business community and the international business community have interests in Thailand. So you need that kind of force also to take a role. And if we remember, if you go back to 1992, the Suchindara events after the shootings of people, the business community came out very strong. The three organizations came out and organized and said, calm down, guys. They didn't do it in 2010, obviously, it was rather different. But I think now it's very important that an appeal is made.
Question over there.
Thank you. Howard Dick, University of Melbourne. We remember that in the past, the military has been factionalized, and that has been very important in the reform process. From the outside, the military does now appear to be monolithic, but are there in fact fault lines that might lead to a different outcome if there is pressure from civil society? I just asked to the panel. I don't know who would like to answer that one. Thank you.
Maybe we can help each other. Okay, first step. The military indeed has transformed from being faction, as for those who follow Thai politics, it is known to be very various groups like the Royal Guard, the Eastern Tiger Special Forces, but now those days seem to be over. The Eastern Tiger, the faction that belonged to General Prayut, General Pravit, and Anupom, staged a coup, yes, but they have gradually had their power to mobilize troops taken away from them. Their wealth has been aggressively attacked and removed bit by bit. And now all the coup-making units and counter-coup units in Bangkok have all been transferred. And as I said, I live right to next of the two barracks, the 1st Infantry Division and the 2nd Cavalry Division. They have now been dispersed. Power to mobilize troops are no longer in the hand of the head of NCPO, but the Secretary General of the NCPO, whose loyalty is not with Prayut and the NCPO, somewhere much higher than that. So we can say that the consolidation of control of the military is happening, and that runs against the strength of the Eastern Tiger faction, which represent the NCPO now. But too bad, by having very strong backing, it seemed to make the army chief even more aggressive than ever before, seeing himself as above any, what I just said, attempt to hold him accountable, attempt to put him under civilian control. He thinks he is untouchable. So that is too bad for Thailand. Agree. Thank you.
So we have a question in Thai here. I think Aim's going to help translate.
Sawadee krab. Sorry, I have to answer the question for Thai language, and Ed can translate for me. คือผมเคยได้ยินนายกท่านหนึ่งน่าจะเป็นนายกสมัครครับพูดถึงว่า
I once heard former Prime Minister Samak say
ก็พูดถึงว่าทหารมีมือที่มองไม่เห็นคอนโทรลอยู่ข้างหลัง
soldiers had invisible hands that were controlling situations from behind.
แต่ตอนนี้ก็เปลี่ยนนายกมา2 ท่านแล้วก็อยากจะถามว่านายกรัฐบาลชุดนี้ที่เป็นทหารเนี่ยยังมีมือที่มองไม่เห็นคอนโทรลอยู่ข้างหลังหรือไม่ถ้ามีใช้ชุดเดิมไหมแล้วอำนาจเท่าเดิมหรือไม่อยากจะถามทั้ง3 ท่านนะครับถ้าตอบเหมือนกันก็ไม่เป็นไรแต่ถ้าตอบไม่เหมือนขอให้อยากจะฟังคำตอบด้วยครับขอบคุณครับ
There has been some changes in the prime ministership in recent years, and I'm wondering, as I mean the speaker is wondering if the same hands were behind, or we have seen a change of hands. So I'd like to hear whether the panelists see eye to eye on this issue.
Let's see what I can say. I think your question reflects, in fact, academic discourse in Thai studies between, the so-called network monarchy approach. Is it still relevant? That network has been disseminated. That network has kind of crumbling down, or not? And we are back into another set of discourse regarding deep state instead of the network. That network, as you refer to, Privy Council and others, they have been removed from the power hold that they used to maintain for many decades. That is obvious that no one referred to the opinion of Privy Council and Privy Councillors anymore. That might reflect something. Another network that is the role of the Eastern Tiger that has a unique reference. They don't have that unique reference anymore. They're on their own. That might be another thing. The change of control, another thing which is important, we talk a lot about kind of political side, but we talk less about the economy side of Thai politics. We should look into the transformation of the of very important institution in Thai economy. That is the crown property. We don't have time to go in depth into that. It has transformed a lot too. So what you refer to as the invisible hands, I think they are disappearing and transforming into something less invisible. But instead of having many hands, they are now less hands, but very visible, very solid, very hands-on. That might be my answer.
I think it's very similar, that obviously since the last elections, we have had a transfer from one reign to another reign. And while we have had a long time, to understand the reign of the ninth king, because he was there for a long time. We have had only a very short time to understand what is going to happen in the new reign. I think we can know already that it is clearly going to be very different indeed, and that's clear. Different in what way, we don't know. But I think the statement that appeared on the eve of the election, where the king had a statement read out in which he quoted his father, saying we should only let good people run this government, that this statement was broadcast on the eve of the election after the campaigning period had stopped, and was broadcast next morning before the polls opened again. I think it would be very difficult to have imagined his father doing something similar.
Well, I beg to differ in some ways, because, we talk about the control of the military, but then the party that the military put together is not a military party, is it? It's a party of some business people, some brokers, some local influential people. And so, even though, the power that be and the military, which is very important in all this, I'm not sure that the whole of the business community of Thailand is really very happy about the present situation. Not all of them. Because for the business group, violent outbreak and periodic disruption like this can be devastating. Okay, it hasn't been so violent in the last 5 years. I anticipate it to be much more than it has been. So I still believe that there could be some counter forces that can come from the economic imperative that would moderate the kind of trend that we seem to think is going to happen. And I hope that I hope that my hope would be to have some voice.
I have a question for Ajahn Haskell, and in putting that question, I want to advert to something which she said, which was quite optimistic about the new voice of a generation, a new generation. But at the same time, to advert to something that Kunthan I said, which was very pessimistic, when he spoke of the future for the two leaders of Future Forward. It occurs to me that many of the people who voted for Future Forward, the constituencies in the central region, are the sons and daughters of the sort of people in the central region who defected from the Democrats to Party. Do you think there's a dynamic there that might be developed, that might develop of its own accord to a large extent, potentially, between generations in the same families, which will have an impact?
One would hope so. One would hope so. But then, we can't expect this young generation to sort of become very active in terms of street politics, because they are the Facebook kind of people, So I don't really know how it's going to work out. But surely a lot of them will be working in business. And some of them will be in startup, and they would like to see their future. They look to their future with globalization and with the international trend rather than the old ways of running things. And with this in mind, I even think that the kind of Palang Pracharat set up will become anachronistic very quickly, because it doesn't fit with the trend of change. And hopefully the powerful elite would be, they will have to rely on good economy as well. And surely a lot of the generals and the middle level military, they are also a business. So I should think, I am excited to see how things would be revealed in the next 5 to 10 years. And with respect to, can I just have 2 more minutes? This Thanathorn, and I agree with, we just had a meeting in Canberra. Dr. Dinamon and Dr. Rajak thinks they're pessimistic and optimistic, but they think that these two, the military and the Palang Pracharat, don't want these two to be the red herrings in the parliament, so they want to sort of quiet them down, so they may not. I mean, I think it would be such a reaction if something very drastic happened to these two people. Don't you think? So let's hope that.
If I may add very quickly to that, for Human Rights Watch, we have been observing the participation in electoral process from the beginning, and one question that we look into is what kind of people support each of the party. For Future Forward, as you know, that there are young generation, yes, but there's sizable number of former red shirt, which kind of jump. They are kind of red that do not buy into Thaksin's styles of deal making. They feel betrayed by when Thaksin proposed amnesty package that will absolve the military wrongdoings and killing as well. So these people that when they follow their campaign trail, which is very interesting. So I have people which in Thai we call Manut Lung and Manut Ba, those uncles and aunties who used to be just red shirt, but now they're split into 2 groups, remain friends. They're being food crossed from the Pheu Thai stage to Future Forward and vice versa. And I said, are you not competing? I said, no. We are against the junta together. And that reflected in when I observed the vote count. It's almost like they share vote between the two groups, but with mutual goal. So when it comes to what Ajahn Pasuk just raised with you about the new generation, they are indeed very young. Most of them were even in secondary school when the crackdown in 2010 happened. They have no experience in street politics, street protest, and violent confrontation against authorities. So they prefer to campaign from rather safe space on the social media. cyberspace, that's where they're very active. And they can mobilize in millions in that safe environment. But at the same time, the picture I show, those Manut Lung and Manut Ba, those uncles and aunties show up and show their readiness to fight again. But this time without mobilization machinery of Pheu Thai or Thaksin anymore. They are organic. They show up in smaller size. And then the other group who show up alongside with those people on the street now say, the activists, the so-called, our friends from human rights lawyers, academics from here and there, university students, more like kind of in senior year. They're old enough to solve what happened in 2010. These are people who are ready to take to the street and be at the front line to confront any attempt by the military to use violence.
Thailand Beasley, I'm on the board of the Australia ASEAN Council with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I'm really interested around the new economy, digital economy, and digital governance and what's going on in that space. So reflecting back, I was at ANU in '92 and the Thai Students Association, we were organising to send faxes back into Thailand when things were happening to keep people updated because the media had shut down. Now, obviously, times have changed, and it's interesting seeing, when Princess Bumrah was engaging initially on social media, the conversations, the parallel conversations using Marvel media, Marvel comic metaphors. I have to have my 13-year-old daughter explain the narrative of some certain Marvel characters to understand what's going on. But Future Forward, for example, have been quite clever in this space, and I'm wondering to what extent is there the capacity for the military or whoever is going to govern, are they going to shut down? Because it's very hard now with Thailand 4.0 and the digital economy being such a key element of Thai economic development, to shut down even the capacity to talk about a Marvel comic. Like, how is this going to play out in terms of Thai politics with this new generation?
Well, to give you an example of Thai junta ability to control the internet, they shut down Human Rights Watch Thailand webpage right after the coup on accusation that contents of Human Rights Watch Thailand page is a threat to national security. And they also accuse Human Rights Watch reporting to the UN system about what has gone wrong in Thailand as a threat to national security as well. So we consider that our webpage is pretty secure in international standard, but they managed to break our security coding, and it became a case study for internet freedom groups to study how the Thai government managed to crack Human Rights Watch protective code and block our website, for example. And let's not forget that the military junta has a clear agenda to develop a set of legislation, to my knowledge, at least 14 of them, to control online expression with, say, first of all, the Computer Crimes Act, or the Cyber Crimes Act as it is known, has clauses that criminalize content considered to be false or distorted and affecting public order, public morale, and national security. That has been used arbitrarily to censor online expression, to prosecute dissidents and critics. Now there is another law which will be very important, cybersecurity law. The government claims that this law is just about internet infrastructure, but there is another clause as well hidden in the middle of the law, saying that content also counts as a threat to cybersecurity. So this cybersecurity law will allow real-time surveillance of online intersection, will allow warrantless seizure of devices, starting from handheld device to your computer network. It also allows authority to demand access to security code of servers. And then on top of that, of course, prosecution, very harsh prosecution. So at least these laws that we are aware of aim to make sure that the last frontier for free expression will be under control. On the other side of it, the military has set up cyber warfare unit, which has engaged actively in producing false information, fake news, and I am one of their targets. And when they explained the purpose of those cyber operations against me, they said, because we cannot throw you in jail, you are human rights watch, you are too high profile, it'll be a big deal. But we make sure that you don't have any credibility left. We will deny you space to lay out your opinions and criticism against the government. In Thai ทำให้ด้อยค่าแล้วก็ปฏิเสธพื้นที่ในการแสดงความคิดเห็น and then they punish anyone who use information from Human Rights Watch in their reporting, particularly the media. For any media who report Human Rights Watch comments, they are going to be summoned into military camps and reprimand, and can be even punished of having their program shut down or the entire station shut down.
So Dr. Ain here is also an expert.
Yeah, this is the expert.
Social media and Thailand, so
I
it's
spend all my
like-
time on Facebook. I actually do social media research. I thought I'd like to share a few things that I found interesting from this election. One is actually look at all the data of all the campaign from 10 parties, 10 top parties, since November last year until the day before the election day. And I look at engagement rate as being an indicator of how well each party could engage the base. And the number one was Thai for doing almost nothing on Facebook. And in fact, shut down his Facebook page on election day in fear that it would give the government some, an excuse to shut them down. So what it meant is that the branding of Thai was visible and continued to be really influential. And it didn't have to do any work on establishing a new brand. It just kind of kept on going and being reactivated by the base. On the other hand, Future Forward Party did really well given that it was a new party. So they started early. Their tactic was they realized that they don't have the party structure as the speaker said, so what do? They set up local, provincial and sub-local chapters of their parties online, and they mobilized those to mobilize other people online instead. So they set up all these massive networks. So the most networked party of all the parties, meaning that they have most engaged local chapter, but overall on the scheme of in the number of people engaging with them is far less, a lot less than the Thai. So I think if Future Forward actually want to be in opposition, because they're really good at being in opposition, and it's easier to run their hashtags and as an opposition, right? Because you can use really cool words and really cool memes because you're opposing. When you're in government, it's kind of tough to be cool and use the right meme because you don't have an excuse to make really ridiculous memes about the government. They're really going to build up their real base online really well. So I think that's something we can look forward to. Now on the issue of surveillance, most of the stuff that the government has done is for deterrence. So to impose censorship. So even now and then some obscure person will go to jail for absolutely doing nothing. And it just instill fear in regular people of, oh, when is it going to happen to me? But they would target influencers like Kunsunai, right? Because influencers are the most important mobilizers of new thoughts and ideas online, right? We're all running a currency of posts, really short memes and hashtags here, right? We're talking about kids reading through this, right? So that's why it's targeted, is because it's an influencer online. So going forward, regardless of the kind of cyber laws that we're going to be registered in Thailand, I don't think we could deny the fact that a lot of people are actually not deterred. There's actually a sharp increase in criticism of Prayut on his own official page since 2017. It's just that they haven't paid attention to it. And that's really sad because I saw a massive drop in the number. So I look at sentiment, like positive, negative, actually massive increase in negative sentiment online on his page since 2017. He just hadn't, the government just hadn't paid attention. So I think this is something that they overlooked. Sorry.
Thank you for Aim's excellent response. And we're going to follow one last question. Run out of time, and then I'll quickly have a very brief conclusion for you.
I just want to ask a kind of odd question about the real major losers in the election was the Democrat Party, which kind of just got decimated. And I mean, their vote got split between FFP and you'd probably say the Junta's Party, right? And my thing is, I mean, the Democrat Party, they're not just a kind of outmoded conservative party with some like photogenic HISO, Bangkok liberals as a face. They've been a very shady mechanism for a while now, like the Abbotsford 2010, and Brave as architects, the 2010 massacre, organising and supporting the kind of ultra fascist wish mob, blah, blah, blah. But what's really interesting is that who are emerging in the Democratic Party now as a lot of the kind of southern players. Like if you saw the it is a question. My question is this: we've seen Dawan Tumpal, Sudep Sensan, Chipasa. They're all rising now, and it seems like that the poster boys for the liberal elite are being completely eclipsed by these southern kind of gangster faction. And I wonder if the panelists have any anything to say on that, the rise of these in the south.
This is not the first time this has happened to the Democrat Party. It's the fourth. They come up. And a new set of people come in, and then they split apart, and they get rejected by this very fickle Bangkok electorate, and they die, and then they get reborn again. They have better institutional foundations than any other party in Thailand. So I don't think we should think this is anything more than another blip of this kind. I think you're right that they have been turned now into a southern party, even more than that, a middle south party, right? And that this is an area which still very much is run on old style politics, and is very much unchanged. So therefore, that will be the character. But if you remember the last time when they went down in this way, what happened was then they had this, what came back was the injection of these bright young fresh-faced kids, including Abhishek Jiwa, which totally changed the party and made it new again. I think you'll see something like that.
Yeah, if I may add very less than 1 minute is, being Southerner myself, and family of course, what worries me, Chris, is that to become relevant, seeing itself as losing to both Palang Pracharat and then at the same time losing attempt to capture new voters to future forward. It seems that Democrat now has chosen to be even more conservative than ever before. That is what worries me, that they will end up being supporter of military violence that now we are very much worried about.
Okay, on that note, I'd just like to wrap up and make some general comments if I may. First of all, thanks again, Ajahn Puso, Ajahn Chris, and Khun Sunai for their excellent presentation. I think there's a lot of continuity and change, really, in the Thai elections. What's interesting, of course, is the election a couple of weeks ago, and we still don't actually know who will be the next prime minister. That is quite telling. I think Khun Sunai earlier mentioned about Myanmar elections, and I usually research more Myanmar. And I'd actually say this election in Thailand in 2019 is probably more farcical than the one in Myanmar in 2015. Because the one in Myanmar in 2015, despite all its limitations, was relatively fair and fair. I mean, we now have National League for Democracy, having a coalition government in Myanmar. Whether we find out democracy is a different matter, but it was a relatively fair and fair process. So we see how electoral processes diverge between Myanmar and Thailand, whereas Myanmar has somewhat progressed in terms of this electoral process, whereas Thailand has become more of a farcical. In the election commission, no one takes him seriously anymore, right? And a few things to keep in mind: the military is still a very, very active player, and I thank again for everyone here who contributed because they all have to return to Thailand at some point. So we can appreciate that certain comments we can't freely express because of certain laws in Thailand. And lastly, again, in this highly polarized environment, I thank everyone for being able to keep their cool. I know in past academic events we have yellow shirts, investors, and shelter and that and everything. That is to be the case today. So thank everyone, and again, thanks for attending and thanks for your panelists. Thank you. Okay.